What is going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indy Wrestling Podcast. Nick, Happy New Year. How are you? It's good to be back.
Well, yeah, man, it is good. Happy New Year too. I guess because in hindsight, episode we recorded for last week, we recorded it prior to it, but it aired on New Year's, I guess. So it kind of people are probably thrown for a loop. Obviously, I went on vacation for 4 or 5 days, whatever it was at this point. I can't even remember. And so we recorded a little bit early. So, that's kind of why. Is it not just a vacation and a break like the whole holidays? It just like throws everything off in general for you?
I saw so many memes and TikToks on the week between Christmas and New Year's. It doesn't matter what day it is. It doesn't matter. Like, you just don't know. Nothing. It's like everybody. You like, what day is this? I don't know. I don't know the date. I don't know the day of the week. And that's a good thing. I think it's a good change of pace and change of rhythm for all of us. So speaking of change of pace and change of rhythm, as you know, fans, we have changed the format of this show. If you want to catch the 5-star Georgia Indy guide, you can check that over at patreon.com/tap.pod. All you need is a free account to watch that show every single week. Of course, you can see the regular show over on YouTube at taptappod.com. I have a backlog of stuff that I have recorded for Patreon and just have not uploaded it yet, especially in the wake of everything that happened last week with the finalists for the Georgia Wrestling History Awards being named, and just some thoughts heading into the new year. But there's never been a time to become a patron, free or otherwise. But just know in 2025, if you are a paid member, you're going to get a lot of stuff this year.
Yeah, a lot of bonus stuff, get the show early, that kind of stuff. And then something unique last night for people, out of time. So we're recording Tuesday, obviously. Myron took a peek behind the Netflix wall a little bit, and I'm not going to get into the details on it because I don't even know if you're supposed to do that kind of thing. But it was shared it's a behind the paywall of a little something interesting that we saw about Netflix and how it works domestic versus international. I thought that was pretty cool. So we put it up there, whatever. And so all that extra stuff is kind of really cool.
Yeah, you guys will have full coverage of that first, the debut of Raw on Netflix. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about
real
that.
quick, we don't do this often. We rarely talk WWE. And we're going to give it 3 minutes, guys. Not a lot of long window here. But I will say curious because, we are going to take a deep dive into it tomorrow on the Tapped Out show. Just basic cover thoughts on, the Netflix debut of WWE.
First of all, I had not watched Raw live in a very long time, and I did last night. And I think there were a lot of things they were trying to accomplish. I think that show last night wasn't for me. They've got me. They know I'm going to watch. And they packed a lot into that show. It felt like, anyway, yeah, it was good. I didn't watch the whole thing. I went to bed, but I watched the rest of it. I think I went to bed because I knew I could watch it on replay. So this morning I woke up to people, and there were a lot of students on campus who were going to be watching that, who don't normally watch wrestling, but they're like, hey, we're going to check it out because it's on Netflix.
Yeah, and if you want to hear my take on it, because I've got a lot of thoughts on it, and it's not just, hey, this is what happened on Raw on Netflix. It's not just that. I think there's a lot of more of a big picture things that I took away from Netflix's, Raw debut, and those will be, again, tomorrow. I guess it doesn't matter if you're a paid or a free member on Patreon. It's going to be tomorrow if you're listening to it, because it's either going to be you're listening to it on Wednesday as a paid or Thursday as a as a free member. But yeah, it's there's lots of thoughts I think that are really cool, and plus, not to mention, we're going to do a little something potentially bonus on the Patreon. We've discussed it on today's topic on the Tapped In show.
Yeah. So anyway, lots going on. You need to become a member. Because you never know where we're going to be and what we're going to be doing. We're going to be live at a show recording some more this or that's. But for now, This week's This or That features a young man that you and I both have a lot of stock in, and that is KJ Impala. What's up, everybody? It's another edition of This or That for the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. I'm Heath Mulligan, joined by KJ Impala. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Let's just jump right in. Okay, there's a party happening. Would you rather be the party host or just a guest?
Just a guess. That's an easy one.
So you're not like the life. You just kind of want to be chilling.
Oh,
huh?
no, I might be the life. I just don't want it at my house. I want to go to somebody's house. That's where I want to be.
All right. So I know as a wrestler, you're driving a lot. You're in the car. Are you listening to podcasts or audiobooks?
I would listen to podcasts. Podcasts easy, hands down.
Okay. Other than the Tapped In Wrestling Podcast, what kind of podcast you listening to? Who you listening to?
Easy stuff. The Ryan Russillo podcast and the Dan Le Batard show.
Oh, gotcha. So some sports stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
So what's your, you're wearing a Mariners hat.
Yeah.
Is that your team?
Nah, so actually from Detroit, Michigan. So my teams are the Detroit Lions, of course, and then a back pocket one. I love the Ohio State Buckeyes.
All right, fans, that's been This or That. I'm just messing with you. All right. So Mac or PC?
PC. Easy stuff.
PC. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you an Android guy or an
No. I'd like Apple products, not on the computer.
Okay, I got you. I'm with you. All right, you're going out for a fun night. Would you rather go to a carnival or to a zoo?
Carnival.
Carnival? Okay.
Yeah.
If you've been to the carnival, what's your favorite carnival game?
Oh, the one where you throw a ball onto like these like colored tiles.
Yeah.
And if you get it, you get a prize or something.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you now? Our fans want the truth. Have you ever won the big prize at one of these, like the big teddy bear?
I'll tell the truth. I have not. I can't say I have.
Me neither. Would you rather go? Going outdoors? Would you rather go camping or glamping?
You got to explain glamping for me.
So camping, you're in a tent. Glamping is you're renting like the fancy rustic Airbnb.
I'll be honest. I'm more of a glamper, but camping's all right too. I'm in the middle, but glamping for sure, if I'm being honest.
All right. Again, you're on the road a lot traveling.
Yep.
Suitcase or a backpack?
Oh, wow. So I have both. I prefer the suitcase. You get more in it.
Yeah.
But you always need a backpack for accessories.
That's right. Last thing, you're making your hamburger or your hot dog, mustard or ketchup?
Ketchup.
All right. I hear you. Tell everybody where they can follow your career and come see you out at a live show.
Of course. Based out here in Atlanta, Georgia. Socials are KJ_Impala. Please follow, like, and subscribe, please.
And he is on Turnbuckle, Wrestle America. He's all over the place. And you better catch him local because he may not be here for long. But come out and see us, and maybe we'll see you at the matches.
Thank you again,
That's
man.
a young man that is always fun to watch. And we've seen him do really well in singles and tag team. We've seen him work both sides of a match and just
seen him work a 6-man up close.
That's right. And listen, you're gonna hear. Couldn't put the kid over more. Just about as nice as you could be.
Oh yeah, we both like he's physically, like, hey, he looks, he's got, look, you could tell he's an athlete, right? He moves like an athlete. And a lot of people sleep on that a lot. I always say, that's the guys that get those WWE NIL deals, and then they kind of get an opportunity and they work through. There's a reason why. It's because promotions should like guys who are athletes, women that are athletes. They're coachable. They can listen to criticisms and their feelings don't get hurt so easy. So I think that's he's got a lot of positives. And like I said, just a great attitude. And look, am I partial? Yes. I literally was in a 6-man with the guy. Like I'm partial,
yes.
But by the way, the reason why it's not because of that situation, but it was his attitude in that situation and how positive it was. So yeah, that's why we're big fans of him, and I think you should be too. Like I said, he's held gold here in Georgia and more, and I think there's a lot more in his future down the road.
100%. One of the things that could be in his future is the subject of our episode today, and that is the Georgia Wrestling History Awards. The finalists were named last week, and we're going to take a pretty deep dive into some of the categories, who made it. Just we got a list of things we want to talk about. This is always one of my favorite times of the year in the Carolinas and Georgia because it sparks such good conversation. What were your initial thoughts when you saw this list of finalists?
Let's preface this whole conversation. I think there is a little bit of a preface that has to be put on it because everybody for years has known my stance on just because it's not, by the way, it's not these awards. Mm-hmm. It's wrestling awards in general. Like it's the same to me. This is to no offense to anybody. This is no, when I say awards, I mean, like I even feel that way about like People's Choice Awards or the Kids' Choice Awards, you know, for movies and TV shows and sport, you know, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I can't remember if this is in my notes for later, but I'll probably go ahead and spoil it and get it out of order. Like, look, if you don't win, your feelings shouldn't be hurt.
Yeah.
They really shouldn't. And we'll probably dive into the whys and all that kind of stuff. If you do win, should you feel, you know, should you feel proud? Yes.
Yes.
If there sounds like there's a question mark in there, that'll probably be answered in the same thing we're talking about here. So it's like, look, I have always said like, hey, I'm always, look, we're not going to go too far into behind this, how this stuff works, but like, I've always had like thoughts and suggestions of like, hey, what if you tried this? And what if you tried this? Could this be better? Could this help prevent this? And so, you know, and I know there's a lot of people out there like, hey, you shouldn't have to come up with rules or whatever. And I understand that, but unfortunately we live in a time where that is the case. So you say all that, I said all that to preface up, but like, look, I enjoy them. Like I said, I'm like you. I love the fact that it's just got people talking. What I think, what you think, and what other people think of them in the grand scheme of things, should it matter? I don't know. I'll throw that back at you. Like, how much? I mean, like, I don't think. Answer that question first. Like, I'll let your thoughts just on like the importance. And I didn't, you know, I'm not being sarcastic when I threw the air quotes up. But literally, the importance of the awards per se.
I think the importance of the awards is the conversation that it sparks. Like whether you win or not, to be talked about, to be thought about by your peers, by people, by fans, by people. The fact that people are talking about you, again, whether you were a finalist or not, whether you like, that's what you want. In this case, there's no bad publicity. People are talking about you. And that's the thing about Georgia wrestling is you and I have a podcast about it. So we want to talk about it.
Let me ask you this, because this is kind of a thing too, in my opinion. This is kind of where, like what you just said, even if you don't make the list or you don't win or whatever, that wasn't there a thing, by the way, bluntly telling everybody, I'm the one guy in the United States who never watched American Idol. But I had always heard this discussion of, hey, you don't want to win. You want to be like second, third, or fourth on that show. Because if you win, you're locked into one of their contracts, which is not the best contract on the planet. But if you can make it all the way to the finals and everybody gets to see you the whole time, but then you don't win and you can kind of go off and do your own thing, you're probably in a better situation. I'm not saying this is the same, but what we're saying is sometimes being like first, second, third, fourth, or even the guys like, how many people are like, have we seen online? And we're going to come back to this in a minute. But like saying like, well, what about this guy? What about this guy? It's literally the outpouring of people saying, hey, this guy deserves his just due to whatever. And I think that kind of brings us to our first point, right? Like, you like that? That was pretty good. That when we said like, hey, I've been doing this for a while. I'm actually getting better at it. You know, you can't have, back up, you can have, you know, a ton of finalists. I have always said, and look, this is one of my few suggestions, and look, I know a lot of people will push back on this, but I've always said, like, you need 3 finalists. That's it.
Yes.
By the way, I am not saying anything on this show that have not been said to people that they know that I think this. Trust me, there's one thing I've been clear about this. The powers that be on this know what my suggestions would be. I'm not taking shots at anybody. This has been said to people
Yeah,
to
to their
people, not
yes.
yeah, to their face. And by the way, that's not trying to be disrespectful for those people. They were just like, hey, if you got feedback, here's my feedback, and this is one of them. I think you need 3 and only 3, and I'm firm on that. That is one, and you can give me a million reasons from Sunday why there should be 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 10. I think it's 3. I'll give you my argument in a minute, but I think you probably share the same sentiments.
Yes, to me, once you get to 3, if you add that 4th or 5th or 6th, do you just want those people to be mentioned, or do those people have a legitimate chance at winning? One of the things we'll talk about throughout this episode are some of the differences and similarities between the Georgia Awards and the Carolina Awards. One of the things I've talked about, and I love Robert Truesdale, love Redbeard. He has a formula he uses. So people send in nominations. And this year, he calls them nominees, but they're actually finalists. And of their 9 categories, every category had at least 10 people, not 3, 10 people.
Yeah.
And I just think that's crazy. Again, he has a formula he uses, but I think you're right. I think it's 3, because really in each category, now I think there's a lot more parity than there has been in a good way. But yeah, 3 to me, 3 is the magic number.
So in the Carolina example, by the way, I'm disclosing out the fact that you know 100 times more about the Carolina Awards than I do. I'm saying that up front but let's hypothetically say, and I know the way it's decided at the end's a little different as well. It's not just the online vote, correct?
Correct.
So
correct.
let's say it was. I know it's not, but let's say it was. My argument, part of the argument that I have for it is I'm always like, I don't think I want to say that. Part of the reason why I want to say what is like, you could have a winner if you have 5 names on there.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question. tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Answer this question if you were a wrestler. If you found out that you were Wrestler of the Year, but you only received 28% of the vote, were you the Wrestler of the Year? Like,
Right.
or was it so competitive? 'Cause my theory's always been, if you've got more than 3, do you have 1?
Yes.
And I get that. That's a controversial statement to a lot of people. I think generally, but the reason I always come back to this, by the way, is I'm like, look, I understand, like, you don't want to leave these people off, or you don't. Well, look, I get, this is where the hate mail probably comes. I get people didn't want to leave out Ole Miss or Alabama or South Carolina out of the college football. Like a nomination committee at some point has to make those decisions. Like, that's what they do.
Yeah.
They make difficult decisions. And, look, I would rather argue 3 and 4 than I would the fact, like, when you have 5, theoretically, it is mathematically possible, if nobody's really good with math, you could have somebody win with 21% of the vote.
Yes.
If it distributed it evenly, everybody got, one guy had 19 and one had 21 and, the others all had 20. Like, I don't know, and maybe it's because I'm not up for any of them. Maybe that's it. Maybe this is a me problem. I don't know that I would want to win Wrestler of the Year with 21% of the vote.
I would take it. But you're right. What does it mean? If you're 20% of the people thought you were using your
let
college.
me ask you, if you have 5, did you have anybody that stood out? If you were arguing 5, my argument is there 5 that are really that good that could be Wrestler of the Year? Or do you just have 5 guys who are jockeying for position to win the vote for Georgia Wrestler of the Year? That's my question. I don't know, and I could be wrong.
Right. I think one of the issues, to use your college football analogy, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, if you're trying to argue that you're the 11th best team, then you shouldn't even be arguing. Now, everybody said Clemson didn't deserve to be in there, but there's really only one set in stone criteria I can't say that word, I'm so sorry, to make the college football playoffs. And that is to win your conference. That's a criteria. That is like the one.
the power conference. But yes,
Right.
yeah.
But if you are in a power conference, if you win your conference, boom, you are in the playoffs. I will say this till I'm blue in the face. One of the things missing from all of these awards, Carolinas and Georgia, there's no criteria. None. Not promotions worked. There's an award in the Carolinas called the Fire of the Carolinas, and it basically is like the Intercontinental Award. And I always argued, well, then if it's for both states, you should have wrestled in both states. Like that was my argument for all the Carolinas awards. If you want to win a Carolinas award, you should work in both states. That should be a criteria. So I will preach until I'm blue in the face. There needs to be some set criteria so when we get to the nomination process, we can look at it black and white. This person didn't wrestle enough times. This person didn't wrestle enough places. This person didn't win any championships. So that, yeah. But I think you're right. 3 is the number. For
example, I'm going to ask you your hypothetical. tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Here comes again hate mail question number 2.
Yeah.
Can you be wrestler of the year and not have been a champion anywhere? I can make a case, by the way. I can make a case for it.
I can see.
How good does your year have to be for you not to have been a champion anywhere and be wrestler of the year? Does that make sense? Like I get the whole hey, Andre didn't need a title, right? Like
Correct.
Undertaker doesn't have to have a title. I would have made the case maybe a year or so, whatever ago. Cruel never needed to be a champion in the state of Georgia, but he was still probably one of the best. So the argument can be made, but I see that's kind of like, again, something that's that simple of saying, hey, if you didn't win any titles, should you be wrestler of the year? tappedoutpod@gmail.com. That's just a question. That is legit a question. Like you were trying to come up with the requirements. We were talking about this off air a little bit, and right. I'm like, I don't know. What are those requirements? Like, should you have to wrestle more than one promotion? You can't work one promotion and be wrestler of the year, or can you not? Whatever. Is there some guidelines there that, again, or how great does that year have to be in that one promotion to stand out that much?
Yeah, I definitely think you should have to work more than one promotion in the state. I think that would be a non-negotiable for me. Like you'd have to work more than one promotion in the state to be, to be eligible for, one of the main awards. Here's the thing: no matter what we do, no matter what criteria we set, even if it was all black and white and very cleared out, as we saw with college football, people are going to complain no matter what.
Yeah. And, and this goes back to the part of me saying, look, if you don't, I get it. I understand. You should not lose sleep over this.
No.
Because it does. People try to act like it is black and white. Hey, these are the guidelines. It's not. And because like I said, we were talking about People's Choice Awards and
yeah.
And I get hey, even which one is it? Is it the is it the Oscars? I think that are voted by actor. The writers one. Which one's done by the actual actors and stuff? Is that the Actors Guild or something like that?
Now the Oscars is voted on by members of the Academy, which can include writers and directors and actors and actresses. It's the Golden. Is it the Golden Globes that it's the foreign press?
I don't. So my argument was this simple though. It's just and I'm not even getting to it's a popularity block vote. None of that. I'm just literally saying because it is subjective. By the way, we've also noticed it's like college football. By the way, we kind of like college football. If you're kind of wondering why we lean back on this,
right.
The analogy is that it's recency, not regency. Recency biases. We've always talked about dude, the worst thing you could do is put your best show on in January. By December, everybody's forgotten about it. You could try to promote it, put it out there. They've moved on. Like one of the advantages AWE has, they put their show of the year on literally days before.
Right.
Everything's done. So
Right.
it's right there. It's right there at the end. So kudos to smart move if that's. But I don't know if that's what they're after. But if they were, smart move.
Right.
But people talking about like, oh, well, what about this guy? What about that guy? Again, it does make the committee. It's by the way, if there's a committee, they have a difficult job.
Yes.
Because if they were picking 3, even at 5, and I understand it's difficult, even some things. So we'll go look at some of these categories here shortly, maybe later. But yeah, it's not that simple. Like to say, and by the way, typically this is just my impression. Typically, those people complaining, it's somebody who works one promotion or they're friends with the guy. And look, by the way, I understand that. Trust me, nobody gets that more than me. Like, hey, you talk about this guy a lot. Yeah, we like the guy. Like, he's a good talent, so he's gonna get some, that little friend bump from us. You're doing the same thing.
Going back to the 3, one of the reasons I would make it 3 is I would change the voting process, because I would make it like sports voting where you're listing first, second, third place. Then when I see, and it's almost like points, certain amount of points for first place.
3, 2, 1, correct. Yeah,
yes.
And you rack up the points. It's simple.
I think because then you can say, then when the announcement is made, like the NBA MVP voting, you can see the point totals.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was one year somebody was like, they didn't even vote the guy. There was somebody that won didn't win a Cy Young, or did win a Cy Young, there was one person that didn't give them a first place vote. And we were all like, who didn't vote this guy first place? Then if you win, you're like, oh man, this is, to me, it gives a little more weight to it. I think there's always could stand to be a lot more transparency. I think people are still confused in the Carolinas. I had a friend, a wrestler, who posted, I can't believe, my feud with so-and-so didn't get nominated. And I agreed with him, because he wrestled this guy in both Carolinas. They wrestled multiple times. They had a dog collar match, or no, they had some sort of match like that. But it's possible they got nominated, but they weren't a finalist. But he doesn't call them finalists. They're just called nominees. Anyway, there's just so much confusion about these. I think, and I think I did a Patreon episode about this. If you are a promotion and you care about the Georgia Wrestling Awards, number one, all your shows should be televised somewhere. There should be video. And you need to be, if you're a wrestler, promoter, whatever, starting right now, you need to be putting together a resume. So at the end of the year, you create a website, you do something, hey, for your consideration. As you're thinking about nominations, let me just show you, boom, boom, boom. Christian Taylor put out there, hey, I wrestled. He's a candidate for Rookie of the Year. He wrestled 78 times. 78 times. So it's things like that, I think, you can only help yourself.
Ref Slim did not shy away from the fact that he refereed 500 matches this year.
Yes.
And he let everybody know.
Yes. Yes.
And like you discussed it, and there was a Patreon about it, because I remember it. And you discussed like, hey, make sure if you're a promotion, you should be putting your stuff into your cage match.
Yes.
If you're a wrestler, you should be making sure your stuff gets put into cage match. If the promotion's not doing it, you do it yourself. And you should be racking up. So like you said, because here's the part that we always talked about, Nick's crazy theory. If you don't care in January, you shouldn't care in December. And I've said that and that was never an insult to the awards. It was never an insult to the wrestlers. It was just that simple. Like, if you didn't care then and you don't care now, I'm cool with that. It's just, I don't like hey, I care in, I don't care in January, but I'm all passionate about it in December, or vice versa. That just doesn't make it. As long as you're consistent, that's fine. But like I said, you should be building your resume. Come December, you should be able to say, this is why you said build your resume. Use the tools that are available to you. Whether it's, hey, let's go back. Let's separate the two because I think they're two different entities. If your content's not available on YouTube, IWTV, Triller, whatever, if your content's not available anywhere and nobody can see it, I'm almost like, at this day and time with the technology available, I don't even know that you can be considered for promotion of the year. So let's start there. Yeah. Certainly not promoter, right? Like, because you're not promoting your product if you don't have it somewhere. I don't care if it's on Facebook.
Right.
You're on your Facebook show, you could put the entire matches up if you wanted to. Yes. Wrestlers kind of the same. Look, if you're wrestling for promotions that don't, then you should be trying to figure out a way to get your matches recorded somehow, whether it's your mom, your dad, your girlfriend, your wife, your kids, your buddy, doesn't matter, filming your matches and putting them up. So even if it's on your personal YouTube and then all of the results of that, you could literally walk in at the end of if you cared, you could make a case and go, hey, here's my favorite match. This is what I think is my best match. This is the best match that wrestlers and everybody, this is fans, this is what they think is my best match. Here's my statistics for the year. And I know wins and losses don't matter, but kind of do if you're going for wrestler of the year, right? Like, hey, I am X and, this is my record. These are all my championships. They're all listed. Here are the links to my cage match page that you can go see them all.
This morning, I created a spreadsheet that has every Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday across the top. And I will be entering in every show's results. So all the wrestlers' names are on the left. And so at the end of the year, you'll be able to see Christian Taylor and go across and see every match he had. And it'll be color coordinated. You can see his wins. You can see his losses. And we'll be able to count how many matches did he have? How many promotions did he work for? This is going to be a lot of work. It's going to be more time than I have. But I feel like at the end of the year, when somebody says, oh, man, this guy should have been nominated, he was everywhere, I can look at the spreadsheet. Like, no, he was not. He wrestled for 3 promotions. He was not everywhere. And there you go. Those are just my thoughts.
But here's the thing. This goes back to like making your case. If you're arguing for somebody, you're throwing an opinion around online. Mm-hmm. And then like have the facts. And I think those facts are backed up if you take the time to put your stuff in Cage Match or you put your, whatever. Hey, if you're, let's use an example. Because I'm not disagreeing. Here's the crazy thing is I completely agree. There was a whole thread about Rob Killjoy. Like, why is he not involved, whatever. And I'm not saying his stuff isn't there, by the way. I don't know. He may have a Cage Match page with all of his results from everywhere he's worked. Maybe the case. I'm just using an example blindly. But, somebody was making a case for him in one of the things that, it's kind of one of the things that brought it to my attention. And I'm like, what if, though, you could come and say he wrestled 83 matches. He was, 60-something and whatever was his record. He held these 3 titles or 4 titles. He was a champion, at multiple promotions. If you could literally factually put it up there, somebody might come back and go, yeah, kind of got a point. But when you're just saying, like, he's great in the ring because here's the thing. I know this sounds crazy. The he's great in the ring argument, I'm always like, by whose standards and whose preferences.
Right.
And Rob Killjoy, by the way, is. Let's preface there. I'm going to say he is. But that's my preference, and I can say that. There are lots of guys, when the Young Bucks were getting all these, like, hey, they've got 5 stars. And I'm like, I don't know who's judging them because by me, I'm not a fan of their style, so I wouldn't give them that. So when he's just like, he's great in the ring, that's a terrible argument for me. Now, because, by the way, here's the difference. Everybody likes to. This is the only. Let me back up. It's not a flaw. It's just a question that I ask. If anybody can nominate, fans included, but only wrestlers and stuff can vote. By the way, I'm not saying fans should be able to vote. I'm at the question being, it is it still being influenced in that sense of the nominations coming in? So Rob Killjoy not making the list, I can sit there and nod and go, this goes back to chalking it up to tough decisions. Committees got to make calls of cutting off, 3 and 4 and 5 and 3 through 7. And wasn't it that long ago that we did an episode and we had a conversation, and I'm like, dude, the gap between 1 and 25 in male wrestlers is not as far, as it is between 1 and 10 in women. That's not a knock on the women's division, but me just saying, I get just choosing 3 out of those 25 isn't an easy call, but somebody has to do it.
Right.
And that's the hard part of it. So you are going to tick off if we think there's 20 top tier wrestlers in Georgia, 17 guys are not going to be happy that they're not that they weren't nominated. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you don't know that you could have been 19 and your name could have been being just thrown out and defended by somebody in that room or whatever, how that works. You don't know that. You did get nominations. It's not that. It was just, hey, at the end of the day, these are the 3. Somebody's not going to be happy. And it doesn't matter what you do. Somebody's not going to be happy.
One of the questions I had for you earlier before we hit record was, what do we even mean by wrestler of the year? Is it the person who had the best matches? Is it the person who had the most success, win and title wise? Is it the person who drew the most? And then you have the male performer. Well, what's the difference between the male performer and the overall wrestler? Because there might be somebody I think's a candidate for overall wrestler. For example, Carly Bravo, one of the top contenders for overall wrestler. He's a finalist there. Not a finalist for male performer. So, but Hunter James
is in both.
Is in both. So again, it's clarity, criteria, and I need another word that starts with the letter C. There's so much to talk about. Like, we could chase rabbits all day. Do you just want to go? Do you want to go through some of the categories and talk about who we thought maybe were omissions?
I mean, look, I think there's a ton. I mean, that you can sit there and probably make a case for. I mean, I guess. I mean, because here's the thing. I'm going to cheat. Let's look at some stuff. I'm going to pull them up as we do them, and I'm going to work. Mm-hmm. We're not going to go through everything because I think that's, here's the thing. So let's start with just wrestler of the year. Let's start at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make life simple. Look, we get it. So it was what? Hunter James, Najicism, Nick Kalen, and Carly Bravo, right? That's your 4 finalists.
Yeah.
Okay. This comes back to the same thing we talked about. You've already mentioned it. And I remember, because what did I say? I said, if Carly Bravo qualifies, like, what is it? What constitutes? Mm-hmm. Do we want to have that argument here? Like, what do we? I mean, is it? Well, he's signed. Well, yeah, but what level? So okay, does he count or does he not? Because I know a couple years ago it was like, well, Cruel was signed, so he's not a Georgia wrestler. Okay, well, how many matches they wrestle? Well, that's
right.
There's the clarity in the criteria, right? Like, that's where things get a little murky. Because here's my argument. You know what? I'm going to save that for another Patreon. I'm not going to get into this conversation about I think there's a Patreon where we pick our winners.
Okay.
Like, I don't think that's here. I think, we'll cut the Patreon and go through them all and go like, hey, this is who we think. With some criteria for that. There will be some criteria for that as well.
Yeah, I agree.
But here's the thing you're going to look at. This is not me saying who I felt like belonged. These were just names omitted from the list. And I pulled up the list, by the way, because I was curious. So last year's winner, Skrilla the Great, not even a finalist.
Yeah.
Joe Black wasn't a finalist.
Right.
Sean Legacy, a WWID talent. Rob Killjoy, we've already had that. CT Keys, multiple champions all over the entire state of Georgia. So what's, you see what I'm saying? Like, look, you could sit here and make a case for a lot of guys. And I could have probably chopped here's the thing. I could have chopped this to 3
Mm-hmm.
easier than I could have going from like 4 to 5. Does that make sense? Like, if you're just saying, hey, like, to me, that's where I get into. Like, I could have cut one, and I'm not saying it's, who it is or what it is. It's just like, because once I started, if I give you Sean Legacy, then somebody can come back and go, yeah, but what about CT Keys? Or what about if I say CT Keys, then you come back and go, what about Joe Black? Or what about, that's where it gets, the gaps are closing in, and it's a harder argument to make. But as I'm flipping through here, I'm going to, like, arguments, and I know it, look, we're partial. Again, we talked about being subjective, right? Mm-hmm. It's all subjective. When we get into the wrestler of the year, male performer of the year, put them in whichever category, because I'm not even clear which is which and what the what the guidelines are for both. Like, push back on Vari Morales. Like, why? Where is he?
Vari, wrestled at least 3 promotions that I know of, held the Disruptor title, had this phenomenal match with Slim J at Disruptor.
Okay, I'm going to pause the button there.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Like, because we were there, and I get it. That was a match of the year candidate, but here's the problem. If you weren't there, you didn't see it, right?
Right. Now, but that may change this year.
Yeah, we'll see it. I mean, you'll see it at some point. But my argument to that is more simply the fact of, I saw it with my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But that again, that goes to the criteria of, like, well, that it kind of lends into, by the way, the problem of, people caring, promotions caring, whether they care or not, to be, they may not concern themselves with those things. And that's where we got into the, if you don't care, you do care, whatever. That's a totally different conversation. But my argument is Vari is, we talked about it from time, constantly on the show, who he wrestles, like size, does, the big, small, lucha, brawling, blah, blah, blah. None of those things are a restriction, and, but not there.
Let me say the quiet part out loud. And I don't think what I'm about to say, I don't think people will send hate mail, because I think people are going to agree with what I'm about to say. Maybe. The dirty, and not dirty secret, the fact is, there are tiers of promotions, and there are certain promotions that we would put at a higher tier. Those promotions have a bigger magnifying glass on them than a lot of other promotions. So when we start talking about awards, we automatically gravitate to those top tier promotions, and many of the guys who are finalists work for multiple ones of those top tier promotions. And so a lot of people get overlooked, because if your first inclination is, okay, we're going to look at these 5 or 6 promotions, then by the time you're done having that conversation, you've left out some of the low, what we would say lower tier or smaller promotions. And I think, oh my gosh, maybe this will get some hate mail. A single A ball player does not get consideration for the Major League MVP award. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a little bit of that playing into this?
My take simply is this. I stand behind that. I think Vari is probably one of the best wrestlers in Georgia.
Yes.
I do. To the point, by the way, I think he's good to his own detriment. And what I mean by that is because people are going to throw up a, like, what did he, like, look, we've got into the whole theories of why he's not in a lot of places that he's not there. I've seen him work with guys, And you've even made like we were having a conversation somewhere to where Vari, because of the speed he works, sometimes makes great wrestlers look slow and look, and like he has to ratchet it down. And I just find it ironic. I don't even know, because I promised you we weren't going to get into how sausage was made. When I'm looking at certain nomination numbers and stuff, I'm like, my only thing is get out of here. That's all I'm going to say. Like, get out of here. Like that's just ridiculous. It is. It's just ridiculous. But again, that goes back to something we were talking about earlier about how the whole system works. Here's the part of the secret. You kind of do have to get along to go. Like you got to go along, get along to even fit into this thing. You can't, because I know everybody always talks about the system and this, that, how it all works and how you get nominated. You can't just being like a great wrestler doesn't necessarily get you the nominations and get you the votes. It just doesn't. It should, but it doesn't. And I think that's a glaring example of it. I'm not going to harp on that one too long, but that was one that I was like, look, am I sitting here making the case? Because it is super subjective. We all have our own personal opinions or whatever, but for not to be even I wasn't there. I don't know. So I'm not going to say, but where was that case to be made? Now here's the other part. I don't think he cares. Let's be blunt. And that's okay. But again, it goes back to what we said at the beginning. If you don't care, you don't care, whatever, so be it. But that's the other one. So did you have anybody on there? And again, we're not going to hit them all. Let's just hit some of the big ones. Do you have anybody in Wrestler of the Year that you were kind of taken aback that wasn't?
No, I will be 100% honest. There was, as I went through, there was nothing missing that I would have really taken a lot of time and energy to argue for. Well, that person should have been in there. My favorite match of the year, probably to even now, was Chip Day and Martin Stone at the Jimmy Rave Cup earlier in the year. Just because they went out in the crowd and it was just very interactive and it was fun. It wasn't what you typically see from Chip Day, and they were beating the crap out of each other, but they were having the time of their lives. And then when it was over, Chip Day left mad. Like he was mad that he lost, and I liked that. But it was like, okay, So no, I think for I think it's like arguing for Ole Miss. Is Ole Miss really going to win the whole thing? Probably not. And so really, so I think.
Here's one I want to ask you. This is going to be a unique one. I wanted to ask you this. There's two more. There's three more that I want to hit on before, and I don't want us to go super long on this. One, here's a weird case to make. Mm-hmm. There's an old movie called The Distinguished Gentleman. Eddie Murphy movie. You ever seen it? Never seen it. It's got a great concept. And by the way, if you need to chuckle at politics for a minute, there's your movie. Hit pause, go watch that, and come back, because I don't want to spoil anything before you go that far. Here's my take. Had you put Danny Jordan's name on here, would she still have won, even though some people argue maybe she didn't wrestle in Georgia enough? Hey, she walked out of 2024 the IWE Women's Champion, right?
Right.
By the way, I think this is a pretty fair, and I don't mean, I'm not even going to say that because I probably do. I was going to say, I'll be honest and fair. IWE, we've always said from jump, was one of the few promotions that had a legit women's division.
Yes.
They didn't just have two women show up on a show and wrestle for a belt or whatever. They had a legit women's division. Mm-hmm. So if your argument was, because if it's not Danny Jordan from IWE, you could have made the case it should have been Lindsay Snow for IWE, mm-hmm. because that's your two champions, the whole year for the one promotion that we claimed they had a true women's division, not just women showing up and wrestling women's matches. My
And
question
Lindsay,
to you was, if
yes,
Danny Jordan or Lindsey Snow are on that ballot, do they win?
no, because
I,
uh, Lindsay Snow was who I argued for to win it last year, and I don't even think she got a sniff. And then she was the only woman who
Actually, I
wrestled
think
on
she was
every.
the runner-up. I think she was the runner-up last year.
Oh well, that's okay. Which I think I still think she should have won. She was the only woman on every IWE show this year. Now, not to get into the woods, but the finish of her and Danny Jordan, where Danny won the title, was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. The police came in, handcuffed Lindsay Snow to arrest her, and then Danny pins her while her hands are. I didn't. That didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, but still, I here's my thing though. That's the only ones that I was like, look, neither one of those two being there,
Yeah,
and the one that you're asking, we were discussing like omissions. That'd be one that I would throw up or thing like, hey,
that
what about?
that was the only promotion. Their women's title was defended on every show, and they didn't have to strip anybody because they started no showing or got signed or anything like that. They were by far that was the most consistent women's division.
Yeah. By the way, we're like I said, the other one I wanted to bring up, promotion of the year. This is the toughest one, and people don't believe it because I think we talk about our tier. There's probably this is the closest it's ever been at the top. Look, I had a conversation with somebody, and I'm gonna on the Patreon we do for this. I'll say what I said, like word for word, to that person. Like I was like, I would say the promotion of the year was this promotion. And to be blunt with you, I don't know that I could sit here and argue and defend it. It's just my gut feeling telling me this is the promotion of the year. But the one I want to ask you about is Classic City not making the list. And, look, they were hot. They had a lot of buzz. They were, look, I don't honestly, what does promotion of the year mean? This goes back to the criteria, clarity question, right? Is it who sold the most tickets or who, biggest shows or blah, 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 average is the most? Because I got a great one for you, dude. Where's Bullpen? Bullpen by far and away average, if we take Lucha Lucha out of the equation, right? People at Bullpen's probably averaged more than anybody for the whole year.
Yes. I'll be the first to I would say for Bullpen to get on this list next year, I think they're already doing the first thing I'm going to say, and that is definitely getting into more storylines and angles. 2, they gotta start putting their shows out. They gotta have it. I can't vote you for promotion of the year if I don't see any of your stuff. Classic City is probably the top of the list, tied with Coastal Empire, of promotions that I'm going to watch more this year. Absolutely. I think they were the runner-up last year, and I was in a conversation with somebody that said that last year really wasn't their year, that it could have been this year, but I can't put my finger on why I don't consider them in that realm. I can't, like I said, can't make an argument against it.
I'm not making this case here. I'm not. But I know one of the things that I hear, and we talk to a pretty good bit of people. One of the biggest things that I know that like some promotions aren't going to like it is, hey, what's one of the biggest pushes is our shows are free shows. Yeah, I mean, there's some, I get it. I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong, but I understand the argument of like, hey, you don't sell tickets. I mean, how could you be promotion of the year? Like, well, we put on great matches, and okay, that goes back to the wrestling piece of where it becomes subjective. What if I told you I don't like those style of matches?
Yes.
What if I like story over, and blah, blah, blah. There could be a million reasons from Sunday, right? But I just think the Classic City is to not be, I don't know how much they were in the conversation. Like but I get them. Like, the only thing I didn't understand is I saw like Deep South arguing about For More Love, and I'm like, you're on the list. I don't understand that.
Yes.
Like you are up for promotion of the year. Like how did you get left out? Oh, it should have been our booker. It should have been. Here's the thing. I understand. I get the logistics. I understand all of the reasons they're there, but this is the segment where we come into and go, there's just too many awards.
Yes.
Like some of them need to go
segue.
away.
I was going this there. I would start with, do we need a Booker of the Year? How many promotions have, because here's the thing, Dylan books the show, but we know that there are different guys agenting matches. So isn't that booking too?
Here,
if you're telling guys how to lay out their match and stuff.
These guys deserve their flowers, and I'm not trying to take them away from them, but like
Yes.
we had the argument of like promotion and promoter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, shouldn't that just be one at this point? Like, criteria and clarity. Like, that's all we're saying. Like, I would sit there and make the case for, hey, booker and promoter work hand in hand to determine promotion of the year. That is your reward.
Right.
Because if you were booker of the year and you had the absolute best stories,
mm-hmm.
and your promoter's out there and he's the best promoter, that's kind of going to get you promotion of the year. So it's kind of like Lock Stop is kind of lining some of those up. So that's kind of be my only pushback on it, right? I just think like you just drop those three into one.
Right now, there are 18 Georgia awards. By contrast, Carolina's has 9, half.
Yeah.
Carolina's does not have promotion of the year, Booker of the year, promoter of the year. Some of those. I definitely feel like 18 is far too many.
Is this the part where I come back to the last one where I got a question on the omission?
Sure.
I didn't know if I don't want to take you off of your thought.
You're good.
Mentor of the year. If, and this goes back to criteria and clarity. If Carly Bravo qualifies for, and by the way, listen to the Patreon. I'm going to share my complete thoughts on the Carly Bravo thing.
Yeah.
If Carly Bravo qualifies for Wrestler of the Year, if the Infantry qualify for Tag Team of the Year, QT Marshall completely qualifies for Mentor of the Year in Georgia, because I don't know that, and listen, and this is with no disrespect to anybody else on the list, because I have the utmost respect for everybody else on the list. One of those guys I love like a brother that's on this list.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody probably has his hands more into developing young talents, good, bad, or indifferent. I know people have their thoughts and opinions. Doesn't matter. That the people that are going out, there's nobody more that has their finger on the pulse of Georgia, like talents that you're seeing on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get it. Hey, like I'm training this guy, training that guy, training that guy. But but this guy's training guys that you're seeing on Ring of Honor, Collision, Dynamite, like that are also working these other, like you kind of see where I'm going, right? Like this is not even with no disrespect to anybody else on the list. How is his name out on the list? And I know he's been there in years past or whatever. Is it because, and I even brought up a thing about like, hey, wrestler, maybe? Everybody's like, oh, well, he doesn't wrestle enough in Georgia. Sure about that? Go back and look at the number of matches I bet you QT Marshall has worked more matches in Georgia than some guys that are up for some awards on these. Like, that's just, I'm guessing. Hey, don't let the facts ruin a good story, because this is a great point.
Right.
Is it because he only wrestled one promotion? We talked about that already, about that whole situation. If that's the argument, then you're opening Pandora's box for more arguments down the road.
What even does it mean? What's the criteria to be the Mentor of the Year? Is that what? I don't even know. Is that just the veteran in the locker room?
Taking the kids under their wing and they're talking to them, and like, does that qualify? Like, yeah, okay, cool.
And I'm going to be honest, like, are they really doing that? Or this guy worked a lot of different shows I don't know. I don't
No,
know.
no.
I'm not
Look,
at
I'm
all
going to
the
be
locker
again
rooms.
because I do talk to a lot of people. The mentor list, those dudes are doing it. They are doing what they, they're teaching kids. They're sitting there listening to them. They're actually telling them, hey, you should have, try this next time, and this I would have probably tried this, or, like, hey, I did like that, being positive and constructive at the same time. Like, all of the guys on this list do that. Like, I've heard nothing but that's not what I'm saying, but I promise you, if your goal is like, hey, I want to be the best wrestler and I want to make it on TV, I mean, and then think of just the number of people that this guy's coaching on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
It is in Georgia, etc. It's only my case. Again, this is just things that we were asking about. Hey, omissions, and that's kind of why I brought that one out there.
One of the things that I always appreciate is when promotions basically, once the finalists are out, that they kind of fight for their people and just say, hey, would you consider voting for this? And then they put out the graphic of the different people in the categories they're nominated for. I really like that. I hope everybody understands. I love the awards. I love how it works. But if a guy works for like 5 or 6 different promotions, then he's not, unless you trained him, his first match was in your promotion, and he works exclusively for you, he's not this is our guy. No, like, they kind of belong to everybody.
Yeah, I always just push back when I talk to people. They're like, "Hey, our guy," and I'm like, "Oh, do you have him under contract? Does he not work anywhere else?"
Right.
Like, they're all independent contractors. Like, now I understand. Like, if you were arguing like, "Hey, vote us promotion of the year, promoter of the year, booker of the year," totally makes sense. I've already shared my thoughts on the awards as a whole. Those awards, best match, live event. There are some that make sense.
Yes.
But overall, male performer, female, technical, most improved, tag team, referee, ring announcer now, rookie, mentor, manager. Like, I'm going through all of these going like, these aren't yours.
Right.
Unless they only, like, give you an example. And I'm not saying this, just hear me out. If Gunnar Miller was up for Wrestler of the Year, Southern Honor could say that because he only wrestles at Southern Honor.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yes.
But if you're claiming, by the way, if you're claiming Carly Bravo, okay, I can't even take you serious now. Like, I can't. I just can't. And look, there's some cases I understand, but it should be other ways around. There should be promotions thanking Carly Bravo for making their promotion, not the other way around. But like, I see people like Hunter James is on multiple, he's up for 2 awards and multiple promotions claiming him. And I'm like, okay, first of all, to his credit, by the way, there's not a weekend that I can I can pull our calendar up and go, I can see Hunter James there. I can see Hunter James there. I can see him there. Dude, he's everywhere. And it's a good thing, by the way. But my point is, although he's a bad example, because I could see somebody saying like, that's our guy.
Right.
Like, or whatever. But in general, like, yes, you don't, if it's not promotion specific awards or an event specific award or something very specific, because even, like, yeah, hey, Batch of the Year happened at our show. Cool. That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
It just, like, you don't have these guys contracted.
Right.
The WWE gets to be proud when Seth Rollins wins Wrestler of the Year for the PWI or something like that. That makes sense because he only works for them.
I also like it when promotions do their own awards. Action, SouthAtlantaWrestling.com always does the Action Awards every year.
Disruptor did theirs.
So I think that's great. I think that's I think that's awesome. And I think the awards are good for wrestling. I think if you are a wrestler in Georgia and you really care about the awards, and I meant to say this earlier, and you're working for some promotions that your matches are not getting put out there. If you record your match and you send it to us, either me or Nick or both of us, I would be more than happy to lay some commentary on your match and get it back to you, and you can post that. And
I'm gonna up you one.
Okay.
So I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm gonna up you one. Here's why I don't feel a lot of grief about people when it comes to the matches and stuff like that. And I know some guys sent some stuff. I'm gonna go the reverse route. If there's a match that you worked somewhere, anywhere, and I want you to be like, here's the thing. This is the hardest part of it. Look yourself in the mirror and say, I honestly believe that was a match of the year candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being serious because I'm going to hurt some feelings when I get some matches.
Yeah.
I honestly think this is a match of the year candidate. Send it to us because guess what I was doing throughout the year? I was doing an Indy showcase, and I was putting matches up on our YouTube channel for you.
Mm-hmm.
And people just kind of petered out sending them. And my answer was, hey, you just don't want the exposure. That's fine. I don't care.
Right.
I'm not chasing matches down.
Right.
But if you want that match put up so a couple people can watch it, 2 or 3, that's fine. We'll get you some. Hey, I promise you, the guys at Georgia Wrestling History, I'll make sure they watch it on our YouTube channel if nobody else does.
Yes.
But legit, like let's be serious with ourselves. Because if 4, 5, 6, 7,000 people goes, it better be a good match. Because if you send one that's not a great match, they're going to see that too. So I've got to be more pretty. So my point being, it's not your job. I understand. Like it's not your job to do the commentary. Send us matches with commentary, with the match cut. I don't want the whole show. Really cut the match with commentary. I will go out of my way to help you, and we will put that on our YouTube channel.
Yeah. I think as we go through the year on the 5-star indie guide or whatever we end up calling that, I think at the end of every month we say, okay, what was the best promo we saw this month? What was the best match? Who was the wrestler of the month in January? And then we accumulate that, and when we get to the end of the year, we should have 12 pretty good match of the year candidates. And then there's not that recency bias because we remember what we talked about in January.
And if you're a paying member, those notes will be on Patreon. You'll see them. And you can go back yourself and you can go be like, oh, yeah, I couldn't remember what happened in January. All right, we'll go to the last episode, give or take, like right there in that window of January, and boom, that stuff will be there. And then we can make it a whole thing where at the end of the month, it's like we can rattle off some things and have some arguments or whatever. And I think our point being, we will do our best to try to make this easier and try to help as many people. If you got a great promo that got cut or whatever, maybe we'll weave it into this show. We could say like, hey, somebody cut a promo, legit. And here's the thing: if you send it and it doesn't make it, I'm just kind of shrugging my shoulders, going,
right,
all right, hey, what do you want me to do? I'm like, I just didn't think it was promo of the year.
Right.
So,
I think the bottom line is, if you want to win an award in December, you got to do some work in January and February and March and all that. And if you want to follow all of it this year, because I do think, we're a year into this podcast, and I do think there's a lot of great things we're doing. You got to be a patron. Again, free or paid. That's where you're going to get the 5-star indie guide every single week. Patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You can join for as little as $1. $1 just says, hey, love you guys, thank you. But that $5 level, you get a lot of great content there. Again, as Nick just said, we throw a lot of stuff up on YouTube, a lot of those matches. You can go to YouTube and watch Hell Freezes Over right now. You can watch that full show. It's in its entirety. But again, we're grateful for your support. I love award season. So much to talk about. I hope no one gets that you and I don't like the awards. We just want them to be better. We want this to be amazing. And, but I'm grateful for all the work that goes into them. And I'm planning on being at the Georgia Awards show and participating in that. Not participate, but just eating some food and seeing who wins.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're trying to, like I said, we will do our best to kind of help. And like I said, we are. Look, we just sit here and talked about it for an hour, over an hour for that matter. I mean,
Yes.
well, an hour probably when we started that actual conversation of it. And like I said, we do like. I just always will come back to. I have a repetitive stance, and it's funny. It's because I've always said this. It's not nothing I've deviated from. And you said it best. You added an addendum that I may add to this. Like, it's okay to care about them or not care about them. That's on you, and that's fine. It's up to the promotion. It doesn't matter. I do think were there things that could be improved on? 1,000%. I'm not saying that wasn't the case. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, you're going to pick somebody off.
That's right.
Somebody's not going to be happy, and it doesn't matter what. Anytime you're voting winners, like, somebody's not going to be happy. They're going to make their argument. They're going to bring their case. I mean, that's why, and no matter how much you expand it, it's still going to happen. Again, go back to our college football analogy. So it doesn't really matter. It's going to happen.
That's right.
Yeah. Somebody's going to be unhappy at the end of the day. So, but my point on what the addendum you've added for me is that, yes, I think if you do care, your efforts and your vocalness, is that a word? Your vocalness about winning.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it in December if you were quiet for the other 11 months.
Yes.
Make noise January to December. Do you know who was doing a great job? I'm going to go long here. Do you know who was doing a spectacular job of that? Bryce Cannon.
Yes.
In January, in fact, at the beginning of the year, dude, he was out of the gate talking about, I'm putting on the match of the year. I'm the best wrestler I'm wrestler of the year. And he was already making that case. Like, that's what I need. I need to see it in January, February, March, April, on and on and on. You kind of get it. I just can't hear the guy who's vocal in December and saying and then oh, it should have been me. Plead your case. That's the resume thing. Plead your case. Let's hear it all year long. And everybody's like, I'm just going to let my actions do the thing. Okay, then you're not going to necessarily be in the conversation, potentially. I'm not saying it won't, but sometimes it's not enough. Greasy wheel, right? The whole thing, the squeaky wheel, that whole thing does matter. Like, be out there and hey, you're in a thing. You know why these things matter? We all love affirmations. We like to hear that we're great at something.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. So, love me, kiss me, show me, like that, like the old Seinfeld thing, love me. So it does matter, man. And it's okay. If it matters to you, go all in, dude, and get it. But do it all year. I don't want to hear just in December, in the first couple of weeks in January that it should have been me. Okay, well, keep us right here all year long. There's a guy that in my back of my brain, I'm like, here's one for you. Nah, I'm going to save that for the other show. Patreon.com/tappedoutpod. We're going to do a thing, and we're going to give you our picks of who we think. Again, the criteria will be simple. I do want to throw this in here. We are only going to be able to choose from the finalists.
That's right.
There's a couple categories, maybe whatever. I might have said, hey, I would have probably picked a guy that's not on the list, but I can't choose that guy. I can only vote for the guys that are on the list.
That's right.
I'm going to shut up now and let you take us home.
Fans, like Nick said, Patreon is where you can follow all of the things. And if you do care or don't care about the awards, there is no other place to get full coverage of Georgia independent wrestling. And that is right here on the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. So much coverage, we've had to go to 2 shows. So for Nick McDaniel, this is Heath Mulligan. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And maybe we'll see you at the matches.